Well, I want to say welcome to everybody tonight for the Board of County Commissioners hearing for Tuesday, September 19th. Let the record reflect that both Commissioner Kerns and Commissioner French are present, as well as a nice crowd in the audience. Thank you so much for joining us and during the weather. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'd all please stand and join me if you can. Thank you. So a couple house cleaning items here. If you have a cell phone with you, please put it on mute or vibrate. If you have to take a call, please go out into the lobby or upstairs to take a call so that you don't interrupt or disrupt any of the speakers or the rest of the meeting agenda for this evening. This is a deliberative process, and so that we ask that there's no cheering, yelling, shouting, hooraying, or any other. This is a legislative process, so please grant us that respect for the process. First item, or next item of business is an open public forum. This is if anybody in the audience would like to provide any testimony to the Board of County Commissioners on anything other than what's on our agenda. If you want to speak about the budget, we're going to have an opportunity for you to speak at that later on. But if there's anybody who wants to talk about anything other than the budget, this would be a good time to come forward. A second call for anybody looking to provide testimony in public hearing. Third and, well, wait a minute. We have a winner. Alan McDowell, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, so since this disaster at Freeman, I've been walking around asking questions to why it went down, and a lot of parents are talking about there was not good parental supervision. But I will go back to the resolution I talked about before called the Safety from Homicide/Suicide and Medical Malpractice Plan. And so this is how it goes. Whereas there is no current licensing tests to carry firearms or obtain a weapons permit, whereas around 30,000 plus individuals die per year due to firearms, and whereas the 20,000 individuals commit suicide per year due to firearms, and whereas massacres are on the rise by firearms, creating security concerns for citizens in crowded locations due to illegal drug use, pharmaceutical and mental health drug use, and violent media. And whereas the pharmaceutical, mental health, social service industry profits exponentially off massacres, violence, and suicide. And whereas the pharmaceutical, medical, mental health industry fabricates documents and uses false standards for evaluation to raise profits and create consumers. And whereas pharmaceutical mental health products have side effects that create psychosis, restrict memory, cause confusion, restrict short and long-term memory, affect areas of cognition which cause chemical withdrawal resulting in psychosis after stopping, and therefore to create a proper psychological testing and examination on paper or application independent from psychiatric or pharmaceutical profit testing to evaluate an individual's knowledge, readiness, cognition, and mental state before gaining a weapons permit to carry a firearm with a 4-year restriction on weapons after illegal drug use and pharmaceutical mental health drug use. And so that's all I have tonight, and I'll keep working on it. And it was a draft that I submitted to the Democratic Party last year, even though I'm a Republican. And so I'll just keep working on that draft, and hopefully we come to a solid answer in the future to how to resolve these problems.
Thank you, sir. So is there anybody else would like to provide any testimony in the open public forum? Then I'll go ahead and close the forum. If you want to provide testimony tonight, then I'd ask that you fill out a yellow slip and give it to the clerk, and we'll get you into the queue. If we get halfway through the meeting and you say, well, geez, I wished I could have provided testimony on that, feel free to fill out a slip at any time and deliver it to the clerk, and then we'll get you time up before the mic. This is a continuation of our outreach process for the development of our 2018 budget. I don't think the county has been through a budget development process like what we are embarking on now for as long as I can remember. Part of the reason for that is twofold. One, I think Commissioner Kerns and I are committed to being as transparent as we can with regard to how your tax dollars are spent and how we come about that on your behalf. And so earlier today we did pass a resolution to memorialize this process, and I guess I'll ask Commissioner Kerns if you want to speak to that.
Yeah. So yes, as Commissioner French said earlier today, we adopted our budget transparency policy. So I will just hit on the three main points in which we are committed to engaging with the citizens. So number one, the citizens of Spokane County will be given a minimum of 3 public hearings to share thoughts on adoption of any calendar year budget proposal, in addition to the statutory public hearings required by Chapter 3640 of RCW. Number 2, all budget documents are provided to the public when available. And 3, Spokane County citizen participation will be encouraged and welcome through the following means. 1, USPS mail. 2, phone. 3, electronic communication directly to the Board of Commissioners. 4, contact forms through the Spokane County homepage at SpokaneCounty.org. And finally 5, which I thank you all for being here tonight to participate in this step, and that is public testimony at budget hearings. So this is just one of the ways that we're trying to show that we are absolutely committed to budget transparency, involvement with the public. You all are our bosses. We work for you, and this is a step where we want to take direction from you. This is a budget that impacts the people of this community, the citizens, and having your direct engagement in it is something that is absolutely paramount to us. And we thank each of you for being here tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at more of these public forums as well. And for those of you watching at home this recording, we encourage you to, again, share your thoughts on this budget. We want your ideas. We want your assistance with this because, folks, this is our budget. Ours, yours, this is our community budget, and we want to know what your priorities are to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerns. So as many of you are aware, the budget for 2018 is going to be a challenging budget for us. We are currently looking at a $9.4 million shortfall in revenue to be able to meet the obligations for next year. And as has been explained, and I won't take you through this tonight, but as we've articulated in the last 2 hearings, we've charted how we got here. It's the culmination of 20 years worth of decisions, whether they be voter-approved initiatives, whether they be incorporations for different jurisdictions, whether it's annexations, whether it is the acts of the state legislature in terms of unfunded mandates or withholding shared revenues. A culmination of all of those things have worked against the county's budget, and we've now reached a point to where we need to make some serious adjustments. And so we have started a budget process where we have reached out to all the department heads and said that for 2018 we need to see pretty much across the board reductions in excess of 7%. And 7% might on its face not seem like a lot, but it is, because we have already been streamlining. We've already been cutting back services. We've already been eliminating departments. We've undergone all of these steps to get us to this point, and so now it's crunch time for us. We had put on the ballot for November what is called a levied lid lift, which would have raised, given the voters the opportunity to say, We value the services that we get from the county, and we would be willing to allow for a slight increase in our property taxes to be able to make sure that we can maintain those services, or we want you to live within your means. And we can do either one. We can live within our means, but it would clearly mean that there'll be a reduction in services to be able to accomplish that for 2018. About 4 weeks ago, we took that off the ballot. The reason we took it off the ballot is because we wanted to be able to get an unbiased direction from the voters as to what's your will. What would you like to see the size and nature of your county government to look like? And we thought we had a clean ballot, but then the state legislature ended up adopting a funding package to address the McCleary decision from the state Supreme Court, and that's going to impose on about a little over 90% of our taxpayers an 87 cents per thousand tax increase for next year. So our taxpayers are already going to endure an increase in property taxes in the neighborhood of anywhere from $200-300 to $500-600 next year, and we did not, in good conscience, feel that going to the voters and asking about county government on top of what the state has already imposed was right. And so we said we will create a budget for 2018 that will get us through until next year. And hopefully next year we'll be able to go out to the voters and be able to seek direction from them in terms of what's the size and nature of the services that they want to see in their county government. But until then, 2018 will be a little bit of a challenge. To be able to deal with one-time expenses in the past, we have done what's called a road shift, where the road fund has what they call bank capacity, or that's taxing authority that they have accumulated over the years because they've not levied the tax. And so on a year-by-year basis, the Board of County Commissioners can shift that taxing authority from the road fund into the general fund. We've done that for the last 3 years to deal with one-time expenses. We've not done it to try and balance our operating budget. But for one-time expenses, we felt that that was an appropriate way to deal with that. 1 year it was done to increase our reserves so that we could maintain our credit rating with the underwriters. Another year we used it to make improvements to the jail, elevator, and a lot of other things that needed to be done to keep the facility safe. And then the other year we used it to be able to acquire the solid waste management system from the city of Spokane. So they're one-time expenses. But we had earlier on this year said we were not going to use it for 2018 because we had hoped to be able to get direction from the voters. And since that's not going to happen, being able to balance the budget for 2018 is going to be a series of either budget reductions for departments, as I indicated earlier, 7% across the board, or dipping into our reserves, or the possibility of maybe using the bank capacity for the road fund again. All of these are questions that are on the table, and we're hoping to gather wisdom and knowledge from the community as to which direction they would like to see us go. As Commissioner Kerns indicated, this is your budget. This is our budget. This is how we're going to function county government for the year 2018. So really appreciate you being here. And look forward to your comments, your thoughts, your directions, and we'll be recording that. We'll have a number of hearings between now and when we finally adopt the budget on December 4th. That is, in fact, the official date that we have to have an adopted budget. So there'll be a number of hearings that we have between now and then. So if as the budget is distributed, and I think that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, you'll have an opportunity to take a look at that and give us additional feedback on what the numbers look like. What are some of the programs that are going to be maintained? What are some of the programs that are being suggested to discontinue or reduce so that we can make our 2018 budget balance? One way or the other, the budget for 2018 will be a balanced budget. not just the desire of the county commissioners to be able to do that, it's state law. And so one way or the other, and we will have a balanced budget. The makeup of that budget is up to us and stuff, so that's why we're anxious to hear your input and what your priorities are so that we can try and reflect that in the final budget that gets adopted. So with that, Commissioner Kerns, anything else you'd like to add? Mr. Gimmel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the only thing I would add to that is that, as Commissioner French had mentioned, this didn't just happen overnight. This is we've been referring to it as a broken business model. With the 1% cap on property tax, we supplemented that for years and years and years. It's fine as long as your expenses don't go up over 1%. And we supplemented that with new construction and some healthy sales tax. Well, our sales tax has been eroded, and so it's declining every year. And even though the employees that did a wonderful job over the years of plugging the holes and keeping the level of service up as much as it's been, this model is not sustainable. And as Commissioner French said earlier, we're running out of options of what to do. You can only use a broken business model for so long before it catches up with you.
And that reminds me, this situation that we're in is not unique to Spokane County. Counties across the state are struggling with the same situation. We're all operating under the same business model created by the state legislature. So, the Lincoln County to the west of us 2 years ago adopted a levied lid lift to be able to allow for an increase in property taxes to be able to maintain their services. Whitman County to the south of us also did a levied lid lift so that they could maintain their services. There are other counties in the state that rely on the road shift, as I described earlier, or have gone to the voters and looked for a levied lid lift to be able to adjust the property tax rate. So this is not unique to Spokane County. Counties across the state are struggling with the same situation. There are counties in the state right now that do not have 24/7 coverage for their sheriff's deputies on the roads. If you're going to call for a sheriff deputy, you're going to get them out of bed. And fortunately, we're not there. But as many of you wearing scope outfits know, the sheriff had a reduction in his workforce back in 2007, 2008, and lost, I think, 34 deputies as a result of that budget contraction. And we haven't been able to restore those. And in fact, when you look at the revenue that we received in 2008, compare that to the revenue that we received in 2014, that was 7 years, and we just recovered. That's 7 years of revenue where we were making less in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 than we were making in 2007. So we've, as I indicated earlier, we've eliminated departments, we've downsized departments. County parks, neighborhood parks aren't maintained by the county anymore. They're maintained by their neighbors to be able to keep the parks open and usable by the kids. So we've taken a number of steps over the years, but now the Band-Aids are running out. And so now we've got to have a serious conversation about what do we do in the future. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for this evening. I'm going to go through the list as it's presented to me, so I'm just going to take them in order. If you're signed up to speak and somebody else has already said everything that you wanted to have said, then you can just say, you know what, I'm going to agree with whoever that was, and that's fine. If we go through the evening and what you wanted to have voiced is not said, you want to come to the mic and share that, feel free to do that. If after tonight you think about this and you go, you know what, I wish I'd have said, and think about that 2 days from now, this process for taking input will be open all the way until December 4th. So don't feel like you've lost your opportunity. There's plenty of opportunities for you to share your thoughts with us over the next month and a half as we go through the budget adoption process. So plenty of opportunities to share with us your thoughts. We encourage it. And so with that, then we'll start the hearing. And the first individual I have signed up is somebody new to politics. No, Chuck Hafner, former city councilman for the city of Spokane Valley. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you very much.
Chuck, could you push that white button
There
there?
we go.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm on the scope board, and so I'm here certainly to talk about and discuss our part that we play in the community, but also in the fact of the Sheriff's Department's responsibility. And I know that, Mr. French, you mentioned the loss of deputies in 2007 and 8 and 9, I believe, and of so many deputies, and we haven't recovered from that. So I can only say that if you don't have a safe community, it doesn't make any difference whether you have parks, roads, whatever. You don't have anything. And so in your consideration, when you say 7% across the board, I would hope that you would consider perhaps there's some priorities that would not affect every department at 7%, because there are those departments that are extremely important for you to continue having in Spokane County. Just to give you some background, it probably is a refresher, you know, of your budget of $174 million, I believe. Is that correct, Gimmel, Mr. Gimmel? General fund budget, that, you know, of the scope portion of the sheriff's funding is approximately $320,000. So I don't know whether that's 0.00001 of your total budget. I didn't do that kind of computation, but it's a small amount for what you receive from the 350 people in this community that serve you. When you consider they're looking at $30 an hour for volunteer services now, they put in well over almost $2.5 million of value to the county. So again, the priority is there for you to look at, knowing we play such a small important, but again, it takes resources away from the sheriff's office. And again, I go back to the state that if you don't have a safe community, you really don't have anything. We have, you know, over 350 community members, 18 stations throughout the county, and we feel that we have representation in kind of that entirely within the county that serves you. They're the eyes and the ears of unknown people, and as you can see, the audience this evening, they're here in force not to put pressure on them, but let you know how important, exactly how important it is for you to consider in your deliberations of how important the sheriff's budget is. So when we look at that, even when we look at the small portion for the scope budget, you know, we've already turned in our portion of the budget. We're looking at about $10,000 increase, but that's simply for the Treasurer, Washington State minimum wage hours stuff that we had to do. So you're looking at people that are obligated and are responsible and volunteer hours and hours and hours for you, for the safety of our community. So again, all I'm simply asking you that in your reconsideration, that you look primarily at what can happen with the deputies that we've lost, and you look at the possibility of, instead of saying 7% across the board, you know, I've been involved with a lot of budgets, and we know very well that there are those areas that 7% is going to kill them. We also know that maybe there's those areas and departments you only need to cut 3%. There's others you may have to cut 12%. In order for you to fit the budget. And I know it's a state law, you have to have a balanced budget, so under those circumstances, you have a difficult job. But here again, we're trying to assist you tonight to tell you which ones you should really seriously consider and undertake.
Thank you.
And so with that, if you have any questions regarding what I have to say, it's just a matter of thanking you very much and considering the sheriff's budget and the scope budget within that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hafner. And just for those in the audience that, let me say for all of the scope volunteers, thank you so much for what you do on behalf of the county. You stretch the capacity for our sheriff deputies. And you do all of that back office work, and you're the eyes and ears of our deputies. And I know that personally because I was a cop shop volunteer when I was with the city. And so I've walked in your shoes, and we are in your debt for the service you provide to the county. So thank you very much. The next person I have signed up is Marilyn Cline. You hear that little buzzer, that the testimony is supposed to be 3 minutes, and so the buzzer will go off. I'm not going to be hard and stickler. We're not going to give you the hook, kind of a deal. But when you hear it, if you could wrap up, that would be just outstanding. So, welcome.
Good evening, County Commissioners, and thank you for allowing me to speak. First, I would like to say to all of you that you should be ashamed of yourself for even thinking of taking the sheriff's budget. All of you have run on public safety, and we are well beyond that. This is not about the sheriff. This is about our public safety as the people and the society, which we can barely supply now. The sheriff is short 32 deputies, and the valley is down 11. And now you want to take more from them. Our sheriff is a very intelligent person, and because of that, he has been able to do what he's done and make things work. And now it sounds like you want to take blood out of a turnip. What are you guys thinking? The criminals are very aware of what you're doing, but the people and the public have no idea what you're talking about. I was a SCOPE volunteer for over 12 years, and I now serve on the SCOPE Board of Directors. Our SCOPE budget is, like what Mr. Hafner said, $320,000. We save you over $2 million. I would ask that you rethink the budget and please put the people, public safety, the Sheriff Department on the top priority of your needs and give them an increase instead of a decrease. Thank you.
Thank you. Charmaine Daniels, you were yielding your time to Ms. Cline. Thank you. And again, we haven't adopted the budget yet. We're in the process, so that's don't hang us until the crime is over. Yeah. So, not that I saw a rope in the audience. I don't want to leave you with that impression. So the next person I have signed up is Dennis Patterson.
Well, Commissioners, I thank you for the transparency, by the way, and the way you're approaching this. Mr. Gimmel, you're a good YouTube guy. And in that YouTube, you talked about the broken business model, and I get that, and I think we all do. We're forced to deal with a lot of things that we didn't create. It caused me to take a look at the list of things that the county does. Long list of services and programs and departments and people. It seems like they fall into maybe 3 categories, maybe 4, but I'm only going to address 3. Important, essential, and critical. I think there's one that, at least, that is in the critical category that comes to mind pretty quickly for me, and that's the Sheriff's Department. And the other question you asked in that YouTube video was that we can't be.
No, you're no.
We start over?
No, you're good. You're good. No, we're still wrapping up off of the last one.
You ask about not only the transparency or offer the transparency, but what do you want? What does the public want the county to spend its limited resources upon? And I think that without question, the public would answer they want public safety. They want a law enforcement unit that works efficiently and effectively. And maybe the sheriff too has been a victim of his own good management and success. You know, we look at the work that gets done every day. And I think SCOPE folks see that and see the stress on deputies and detectives. I've only had the chance to see it for 11 years, but it's there, and they are stretched this far, too far. So I just ask you to keep in mind the value that's provided by an effective sheriff and a good, well-managed department, and also the agencies and the volunteers that help support that and offset some of those expenses. Again, I thank you for the time and the opportunity. We may be back again. I know it's a tough job. Thanks for doing it.
Good, thank you. Next person I have signed up is Rick Scott.
Thank you again. My name is Rick Scott. I'm the director of Scope. Been with Scope originally as a volunteer. I've been with Scope for over 20 years now. Commissioner French, Commissioner Kerns, I also thank you for allowing us to, tell you a bit about Scope and the values there. As you can see from our members here, this is just a portion of our members, and like Mr. Hafner said, we have over 350 volunteers. We're very dedicated and very conscious of the safety of our community here by all the different programs they work with. First of all, I'd just like to mention that Scope, and I haven't been up here maybe for quite a while to kind of explain what Scope is. So first of all, it's Sheriff Community Oriented Policing Effort. That's what it stands for. We're actually a nationally known, you folks, all of us have a nationally known community-oriented policing program here in Spokane, Washington, Spokane County here. We've been recognized all through the country. At one time, we had way more volunteers and volunteer hours than Sheriff's Office in Los Angeles County down there, and King County, and anywhere else in our state. So definitely, it's kudos to all the volunteers, and for your allowing us to do this, really, because we rely on funding to keep our 17, 18 stations open as much as we can through funds like this. We have to pay the rents and the communication like anyone else would be. Right now, as of to date, we volunteers have provided over 50,000 hours, and I know that's probably a low figure because it's with volunteers, so many of them just want to volunteer. They don't necessarily want to keep time or have any time recordings on that. So I'm sure we're quite a bit over that. I want to kind of explain some of the programs we do, so you kind of might get an idea on this, and it kind of relates all to our funding too. But one of our programs that the Sheriff's Office has really appreciated is our CERT program. It's our Scope Incident Response Team. They do the traffic control. We have, you can see our gentleman up here on the standing up here in a different uniform, so you can identify them. But you may have seen them on the streets. But they'll do traffic control for any incidents out there, collisions, fires, crime scenes. What that does is they can take over the position of a deputy out there holding a sign and directing traffic. We can get the deputies back out on the streets where they should be instead of something that we can do. So these volunteers in the CERT program are on call 24/7. They have pagers. They get dispatched out from the Sheriff's Office, and just a wonderful program. We have a coordinator who actually on my staff who actually coordinates the program. He's a part-time coordinator, but he told me today that this month alone they've had a record amount of 22 call-outs. I believe I might have some time.
You do. Keep on going for another 3 minutes. I'm going to use the minutes that were used before, so keep on going.
Thank you.
Yep.
They've had 22 call-outs this month to date already, including we had a fire yesterday out towards the valley, right by the state line. Structure fire. They've been out on 4 fatalities this month. This is quite a program for volunteers to go to and deal with too. So they're dealing with things like anybody else would be, to a tragedy. We had volunteers who were out for a couple days out at the Freeman tragedy out there, Freeman High School tragedy. We deal with a lot of things like that. So, but it's such a great program for the Sheriff's Office because then we can take over and they can still try to get out there and help us out in our communities. One of the other programs with CERT, really quick before I go on, is that they incorporated, we've worked with, through the county, an evacuation action plan. And I'll give you a few brochures up here, but our volunteers, when we have a fire out there, like we did last year, we had so many wildfires, we could hand out the brochures to the homeowners who were in that area, and it gives information on what to take, what the different levels of evacuations are, and so it's very important, and especially when you're, looking at people who are, they're in the harm's way of the fire, and we have to say, sorry, we can't let you into your home right now. So this is one of the good products we give out now. Some of the other programs we have limited commission programs. They can write tickets. I'm sure there's maybe some revenue coming in from them for disabled parking, up to a $450 ticket, and abandoned vehicles. Abandoned vehicles also is helping to clean up our streets. We have that junker car out on the street there, and neighbors don't like it, and it's being a nuisance, or maybe it's a harm to kids out there walking along the street. There's a broken window effect where they will throw rocks at something that's broken. It's just a human nature. So there's two of our limited commission programs. We have graffiti abatement, Operation Family ID, when we fingerprint kids in case they were lost or abducted, things like that. Citizen Patrol. We have the eyes and the ears of our volunteers driving through our neighborhoods here. Again, the deputies can't be everywhere, especially when they're limited on their resources too. Radar, slowing down traffic. That's one of the major, calls I get from citizens is, people are speeding through their streets. It's dangerous for them and their kids. So we put out radar. We have radar guns now. We want to do more. Do a lot of support for the sheriff's office internally too. And again, we're not supplanting any programs. We're helping where they just cannot be. Victim callbacks. You're a property crime victim. The detectives, property crime detectives, are so busy, they don't have time to call every victim up. So we have volunteers actually doing that. It's a huge service. Our community the victims in our community really appreciate hearing from somebody, whether it's Scope or the sheriff's office, just to tell them that we're still looking at that. It's just not been put aside in a file. So really important. Pawn data. Again, we do pawn data checks on, the pawn shops and all this for the detectives. We even have a detective. It's really amazing here. We've had some retired law enforcement officers who've joined Scope. You would think they'd want to get out of that business. And they've joined Scope. We have a former LA homicide detective who's working with the major crimes cold cases. Some of those things that they just don't have enough time to do. Mail. We have one time I remember when they had more, sheriff's office had more officers. They actually had an officer delivering mail, back from the valley to training center to downtown here. And now we have volunteers who do that on a daily basis. My staff, just to let you know, with running over 350 volunteers and 17, 18 stations here, we're pretty limited. And at one time there was just basically two of us here. As Cheryl here was one of my halftime admins, and I have Chris here. So we've got to double it up. So I have a full-time person really in a sense. We have a neighborhood watch coordinator, and I don't know if there's Venus. And so she's working on crime prevention throughout the community and trying to start up the neighborhood watch groups and really working hard with, speaking at different community activities to start groups. And then I also have a part-time coordinator to coordinate the CERT traffic control group. We're always looking at different ways how we can support the community, whether we're doing community events, community funds, the fun runs, and the parades, and we do the help with the Lilac Parade and the Valley Fest and all the different areas, and the Rockfords and the Cheneys and Medical Lakes. So we're doing a lot of different things too. It's just, we're just not sitting around. So one of the things I've heard from several of the sheriff and several of the deputies who really appreciate, they really appreciate our service, that we are a force. You guys are a force multiplier for the sheriff's office. Sheriff would say, they couldn't do without us. So we feel their pressures on them being, the shortage of their staffing and all that. So I know our volunteers really want to help that. And kind of in closing here, I just want to let you know that we are here for you. Hopefully you're proud to have a service like Scope, in your county. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Questions for? No, like I say, you provide a valuable service to the community and stuff, and the sheriff's office is better because of the work that you do to help support the things that he needs to do, and keeping the deputies out on the road is critical, and I know that all of you know that. So, in terms of the time that we gave Rick and stuff, there are a couple people that yielded their time to Rick. Cassandra.
I would actually like to speak.
Would you? Sure, go ahead. Come on up. Well, how about if I add you to the back of the list, because I had other people already signed up, but I'll put you in the list here. Next one I have is Georgina Sutherland.
Thank you, Commissioners, for being allowed to speak. I'm Georgina Sutherland, and I have done the Runaway Helpline for the Sheriff's Office for 15 years. I have saved the county over $100,000 a year. But I could not do this job if I didn't have deputies in the school to work with me. I on myself could not go out and find these kids and work with the families and save a Freeman. You will not know how many kids I saved from blowing up schools and from committing suicide. And I can't do this without the deputies. You need to make public safety a priority. Thank you, gentlemen and lady.
Thank you. Next one I have is Jeffrey Benke. If I mispronounce your name, it's not intentional. Okay, good. I got lucky. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for listening to and I'd like to point out that I agree with everything that has been said by all of the previous speakers. Closer to the mic? Keep it up, maybe? Okay. I would just like to point out that some of us are so committed to the SCOPE and CERT programs that I personally have bought laptop computers to put into some of our vehicles because we're fumbling with bits of paper, trying to drive around. And for example, if Commissioner Kerns goes on vacation, one of the things that Rick didn't mention is if you go on vacation, you can call our office and one of us will drive by. You can ask us to drive by your property. You can ask us to walk around your property if you have no gates that are locked. And because one of us has to stay in the vehicle, the other one has to walk around the property, the Sheriff's Department has no funds to provide us with radios so that we can be in contact with the person that walks around your property. That some of us have personally bought radios for the SCOPE vehicles as well. We're that committed. Patrick and I are on duty right now. We're on call. We might be required to leave this room any second. But we have, between the two of us this month, over 300 hours in this month alone. And been to fires. We were at Freeman together for 2 days. We've been to motor vehicle fatalities. And that's the extent of the commitment that we have. Just like you to understand that it's not just the two of us, it's the whole team. Everybody in this room has put in similar sort of hours.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next person I have signed up is Jim Brawley.
Yes.
Oh. Wow. 2 for 2.
Yes, sir. My name is Jim Thralley. I live in Otis Orchards. I've been back in Spokane County since 1978, and I retired after 20 years in service. And looking around at all the people that are here, there's a great number of us who are veterans, and almost all the veterans give back to their community. I've found that in the way to make a community safe is to get people involved. We are involved. We are committed. I've been fortunate to be a member of Scope East now for the past 14 years. I served 10 years as president. And I've had a wonderful group of volunteers. We do Citizens on Patrol. We recently took over not over only our own area, but also the Newman Lake area, which is a huge area. We have one vehicle. Last year, we managed to get ourselves stuck, had to have somebody tow us out. And now with the shortage of vehicles, and we're looking at probably no studded snow tires, we may, have to reduce our ability to cover some of those roads due to the fact it'd be impossible for us to cover with current vehicles. So we need upgraded vehicles to better serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I have, I believe, Connie Rice-Kemp.
I actually am also. I am a scope member. I work at the front desk of the sheriff's office, so you'll see me at the front desk with the sheriff department. So I also volunteer my hours, but I am also a voter in the area. I live in Forest Glen, so I would like to say that there is not enough deputies. There really is. They're bone thin as it is. So cutting a budget to a sheriff's department is not the way to go in a growing area. Our area is growing and growing and growing. I answer the phone at the front desk. When I get a call, we have an incident number or a report number, depending on where it is gone. I get asked, is anybody going to be looking at this? And I see if anybody's been assigned. If nobody's been assigned, I'm going to have to say, no, they're not going to look at this any further. This is what it is. So what area would you like to cut in the sheriff's department? Would it be property crime for you? Or maybe IT department? I don't know what department they could afford to cut at this point. With the area growing, and that's all through the county, it should be an area that should also expand with the growth of the area. All right?
Very good. Thank you. So now, Cassandra.
I have never spoken in front of people before, so you have to forgive me. I'm going to get straight kind of to the point here, because I wrote kind of a bit here. Thank you for letting us be here today. My name is Cassandra. I've volunteered with SCOPE for about 2 years now. I'm on a different scale of what I see because of my age with people and what I see happening in the community. When you take away our officers, you force the public to think officers don't care about them. That they only show up to kill people, and that creates a backfeed loop that puts our officers' lives at greater risk, and that risk transfers both to SCOPE as volunteers and the public as the frustration and hatred grows. That is an issue that we all carry the blood on our hands for. When they can't respond, people stop reporting. Crime rises, and ultimately people die. I got involved in SCOPE because I wanted to understand why officers didn't respond, why people hate them, and why they do what they do at any given situation. Since joining Scope, I have done everything from traffic control to fitting helmets on children. I have taken a course to help the problems rather than add to them, to make people see our officers as more than someone with a gun and lend the community back the humanity that gets stripped away far too often. That makes us more than just a presence in the background, because we link people back to the heart and the soul of their power to be part of our community. I've also learned valuable training, enabling me to respond in an emergency response situation anywhere I go, something my generation desperately needs. We need a budget that allows us to reach new and younger volunteers to keep this going in a generation learning to hate. I really feel that cutting our departments anymore puts all of our lives at risk. And that's a course that we shouldn't go down. If we cut this budget and an officer dies, you know, that the apathy thing is that nobody thinks it's their problem, that they weren't responsible. But that's my responsibility if I don't speak and say something to you. That's your responsibility when something happens to them, because you're in control of that. And that's really emotional when you realize that you have that power. And I realize you have to make some hard decisions. But realize that those decisions are going to affect who lives and who dies every day. And when those people out there in the public see me in a uniform, they don't separate me from the sheriff's department. Okay? So if they start hating cops more and more, who else is going to be their next victim? Think of that. Make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. For your first time, you did a great job. Yep.
Couldn't stop shaking.
So that completes all of the folks that I have signed up for the night. Is there anybody else? Sure, come on down. Anybody else that wants to provide any testimony tonight, feel free to come down to the front here and we will. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Greg Hulk, and I'm also a member of Scope. I didn't sign up because I thought this would probably be covered by someone else, and I agree with everything that's been said. I have had the opportunity to hear Ozzy speak on numerous occasions, and one thing that hasn't been brought up is what he continually talks about, is their vehicles. And that's that he has to go, he rarely, if I understand it right, I mean, I'll be quoting him correctly, but he goes out to get secondary cars. He's got cars on him, the vehicles on him that have over 200,000 miles on them. And so that's just one other little thing going on in the sheriff's department that needs to be addressed beyond the personnel situation. So it's just concerning to me that there are resources that are needed to keep the department able to function correctly. And if they're resorting to equipment that's not safe, then that endangers the officers' lives also. So thank you.
Thank you. Give us your name, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Venus Dalcamry Morris. I work for a program under Scope called Neighborhood Watch. I am the Neighborhood Watch Coordinator for Scope and for Spokane County. My job is to go out and talk about Neighborhood Watch, which includes educating people on what they can do to protect themselves and their property. I personally believe in Neighborhood Watch because I know it works. It works when everyone is doing their part, but it works in succession. One of the most important elements in Neighborhood Watch is being vigilant and not being vigilantes, being the eyes and ears of law enforcement, calling the police when they see something suspicious or criminal going on, and then having law enforcement come out and investigate those calls. I do several presentations a month, and during those presentations we allow people to not just get educated, but to also speak their mind. And so here's some of the comments that we get. I don't know why we should call. They never come, or they come too late. So I'll just take care of the thief if he shows up again. I called law enforcement and waited several hours before someone showed up. My neighbor found someone trying to get into a car. We called the police, stood with the thief, waiting for over an hour, waiting for law enforcement to show up. I had to eventually let the perpetrator go because I had to go to work. The foot traffic in a home is day and night. We have seen drug transactions in the street. When we call the police, they come after it has happened and the drug dealers and the drug takers are gone. I stood outside on my porch on the phone talking to the police as someone was watching me watch them take stuff out of my car. And they said, "Go ahead and call. They're not going to come in time anyways." Another comment was, "Our neighbor has been a terror to our neighborhood. We called the police several times on him. One day he was beating up his girlfriend and it took law enforcement 45 minutes to get here." You know, people all in all are happy with law enforcement when they come and answer calls. It is the time frame that the calls are being answered that is the problem. The problem is law enforcement is too understaffed. When you have neighborhoods that are getting involved but start to get frustrated with the process and give up, you will have neighborhoods that will be overrun with crime. Robert Peel said, "In the interest of community welfare and existence, crime prevention is everybody's business, and that means our commissioners too. When you, the commissioners, receive the same response time due to the same problems, maybe you will get why law enforcement's budget cannot be cut 1 more cent." Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, if you haven't filled out the yellow form, if you could do that just so we can make sure we got an accurate record of everybody that provided testimony.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead and speak, and then you can fill it out
On?
later.
Is it on?
Yeah, it should be
Okay.
on.
So, actually, like, I'm getting extra credit.
Give us your name.
Andre Shevchenko. So, I got extra credit to be here from my DECA class. So, and I don't really know too much. I mean, I've spoke with the sheriff over Facebook. He said that I could come, and so the thing is, I mean, Scope, it seems like a great program within the sheriff department, and I think that if we do tax people within Spokane County, there are people that I know that are making, I mean, less than $25,000 a year, and they have a kid, you know, maybe 2 kids. They have to, I mean, pay tax and all that, and I don't think we could afford to tax those people. So, I mean, I think that because, I mean, we all mentioned that a SCOPE program, you know, I mean, it's just a great thing for our community, but we do not have enough money for the deputies, and somehow we need to get this money. So I think taxing is a good idea, but I don't think we should tax people that are, you know, making less than $25,000. I think we should tax people that are upper class and making more than $70,000 per year, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that's it. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Very good. Anybody else? Yes, sir, please.
My name's Andrew Stockman. I'm a citizen here in Spokane County. I'm also an employee of Spokane County Sheriff's Office. I'd just like to reiterate what was put out by the Sheriff's Office today on a Facebook page. The question is, did you know? There are only 9 deputies who patrol the entire unincorporated areas of Spokane County, not including the City of Spokane, Airway Heights, City of Spokane Valley. 9 deputies for a county that has 1,781 square miles and a combined total population of 490,000. There's no traffic unit, lost due to budget cuts over the years, which was assigned in the past to enforce traffic laws, speed complaints, school zones, things of that nature. Just to fill the minimum staffing number of 9, deputies are